Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Okay, hold on one second. We're going to get started in just a moment. Inshallah. Got to pull up the YouTube feed. Okay. Okay. All right. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله الحمد لله الحمد لله رب العالمين الصلاة والسلام على رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم. Ramadan Mubarak, everybody. Um, thank you for attending another week of Cold Conversations. And we had split reviews of whether we should continue with the spiritual abuse talk or do something Islamic, or do whether we should continue with the spiritual abuse talk or do something Islamic. So it was like split dead even. So I kind of like merged the two and decided to do Islamic leadership. Because it connects with spiritual abuse and cult stuff. Because if you can recognize what a good leader is Islamically, then it's easy to recognize what a bad leader is Islamically. So we're gonna just go into that. I got a lot of information to cover. I got enough information to take us through Ramadan, inshallah. And so just some sources. So I took pretty much, for those that know about AMAU University, they have a Islamic leadership lecture, and I pretty much followed their layout, their format. I took some sources from them, and just representing them. So if anybody's attending that, that has access to AMAU University, go ahead and check out their stuff, because it's better to just go to the source. But I'm going to present it here and add our little context relating to cults as well. Okay, so let me get to the right slide, and we're going to jump right in. It's a lot of great information. I think this is going to be a good series, inshallah. Where are we at? Okay. Let me share my screen. Okay. Wait, what just happened? Play it from the beginning. No. Okay, here we go. Okay, now I'm going to share my screen. We're going to get there. Just bear with me. Okay. Let's make sure that it can be seen. Okay, I think it's up. All right, good. Okay, so, all right, bismillah. So we're going to talk about Islamic leadership. And again, the reason why we're talking about Islamic leadership is because we're Muslim. And when we're talking about cults, we're talking about spiritual abuse, we're talking about someone that's usually in a leadership type position that's taking advantage of the people that's following them, or the people that they're responsible for. So the best source of leadership, of course, is the example in Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And I advise everybody to, right now, today, and continue until you finish, start watching or reading about the Sirah, right? You can read the books on the Sirah, which are very good, of course, but also the lectures by the scholars. I particularly recommend Yasir Qadi, his series. It's excellent because they go into detail and they go into explanations, where if we just read a book, we might gloss over something or miss something or miss the details. When you listen to the lectures, especially the lengthy ones, they go into details for all the different things that are happening. So listen to the Sirah, and then you will see what a perfect leader Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam is. Very important to know his life. So we, as Muslims, we are commanded to love Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam more than anybody, right? That's our command. So we cannot love something or someone if we do not know them. And the best way to know Prophet Muhammad SAW is by studying the Sirah. You will see that it doesn't matter where you stand. Once, if you haven't listened to a Sirah series, an in-depth one, every person that's ever listened to one before and after, before they had one perception of Prophet Muhammad SAW, then afterwards they had a whole new perception and understanding of who Prophet Muhammad SAW was, and it increased the love that they had for him. So we're going to get right into it. We only got an hour, 50 minutes now. Again, jump in if you have any questions, type them in the chat, and go from there. So what's the goals of this presentation? So we want to understand leadership from an Islamic perspective. We want to recognize bad leadership. So when you recognize the good, then it's very easy to recognize the bad. So that's one of the goals. And when you can do that, we can protect ourselves from bad leaders. Okay. And then just individually, we want to improve our own leadership skills, whether we be husbands, wives, fathers, mothers, at work, whatever it is. We all have to demonstrate some type of leadership, right? But the leadership we're going to speak about really here is leaders that actually lead groups of people, right? Like lead communities, people that are imams, people that are leading organizations, these types of things. Not because, like, for instance, the husband is the imam of the household. He's a leader in his household, right? The husband, father. But he's responsible for those people. But we're talking about on a bigger scale, people that get followers and people that lead whole communities and those types of things. But either way, all the leadership characteristics show up in all those various forms. But the first thing that we have to talk about is oppression, because the reason why we need good leadership is because we need to avoid oppression. When we're leaders, and if we're leading people, the biggest thing that a leader has to worry about is oppressing the people that they are responsible for, whether it be a husband with his wife, a wife with her children, or the mayor of a town, the leader of an army, the leader of a community. The thing that they have to fear the most of doing is oppressing the people that they're responsible for. So when you're leading more people and making decisions that affect more people, the risk of oppressing people increases, right? So if we're in just our household and we're making rules like, okay, no TV after dinner, or, whatever it may be, the chances of you oppressing somebody is diminishing. But when you make a rule that's going to affect dozens or hundreds of people, there's a higher chance that you're going to oppress somebody. Okay. And so the actual goal of leadership, right? A lot of people think, oh, I want to be a leader because, I like the status. I want to do this. I want to do that, whatever their reasons are. But the real goal of leadership is, once you're in a leadership position, and this is I think this is going to be a great lecture, or not lecture, or whatever, discussion, because this is also reminders for ourselves, whether we're giving dawah, those of us that are like kind of the faces of R2F or whatever, we have to remind ourselves of these things constantly. So the goal of leadership is to avoid oppression. So for as much as we can, we want to avoid oppression. What is oppression? In Arabic, the word is dhulm, right? I mean, it's dhulm. And it has a lot of different definitions. It could be darkness. The definition given that I found is to misplace something. And there's two types of dhulm, right? There's two types of oppression. And the first type of oppression is going too far with something. Like, for instance, say you want to chastise a child, right? The child missed salat, right? He's 10 years old. He just started praying, and like, instead of making salat, they went to go play the video game. So instead of you have to chastise them, you have to deal with them so that they know that they have to make the prayer instead of play the video game. But you go too far, right? You beat them up, you punch them in the face, you put them in the hospital for missing salat, right? That's going too far. That's oppression. Okay. And I'm giving extreme examples just so we can keep it moving. Or withholding too much. So there's going too far, then there's withholding too much. Okay. Like, say, for instance, I don't know, like a husband's in charge of providing for his family, but they don't, right? They don't feed their family, don't clothe their family, and the family's out on the streets without, they're starving, whatever. They're withholding their rights as far as, being maintained and protected. Okay. Well, we should all know what, oppression is, but that's the Arabic word. But let's get into where Allah talks about it in the Holy Quran. Why do we care about oppression? So Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, Allah Almighty said, so it's a hadith Qudusi, okay? So this means this is what Allah said, but it's not in the Quran, okay? It's a hadith. He said, Allah said, "O my servants, I have forbidden injustice for myself, and I have forbidden it among you. So do not oppress one another." And this is in Sahih Muslim. Hold on one second. Let me get my headphones on because I know the kids are about to wake up soon and cause chaos. Okay. Someone give me a thumbs up if they can hear me or if they can't hear me. I just want to make sure everything's going correctly. Check the questions. Assalamu alaikum, Amr. How you doing, bro? Okay. All right, we can hear me. Okay, so that's the hadith. So Allah forbid oppression for himself, right? Allah said, I'm not gonna be oppressive. I'm not gonna commit any injustice, right? So when we start from the top, if any person, Allah's not a person, or if anything had the right to oppress somebody or commit injustice, it would be Allah. He created everything. Everything is his, right? He's in charge of everything. If he wanted to like just be oppressive and be unjust, he could, and he would have a right to do so. Okay. And this is supported by another hadith where Rasulullah said, if Allah were to put punishment to punish the inhabitants of his heavens and of his earth, he would do so, and he would not be unjust towards them. Let me fix something real quick. Hold on. Got a little typo in there. You gotta make sure you capitalize he when you're talking about Allah. But he would do so, and he would not be unjust towards them. Okay. And if he were to have mercy on them, his mercy would be better for them than their own deeds. So what is it saying? So if Allah just decided to just punish all of us all right now, right? Everything in creation, he would be totally rightful to do so. So if Allah has the right to do this, the only one that has the right to do this, and he's saying, I forbid it for myself, like who do we think we are to be unjust to others or oppress others? And what's the worst form of oppression? We should know this. Shirk. It's the worst form of oppression. So again, when we're dealing with things, right? And this is why you see a lot of times in the dawah that we give, some things get lost, right? Some things get lost because we try to focus on the worst forms of things. So the worst, no matter what goes on in your family life, in your home life, in society, in your groups, in your communities, the worst possible thing that could happen is shirk. That's the worst form of oppression. So, for instance, may Allah protect us all from this. But say I came to my house, right, and I was just beating the crap out of everybody, wife, kids, right, dog, cat, just abusing everybody physically, verbally, right? That would be less if I came in my house and taught my family to worship idols, because the worst type of oppression is shirk, right? Because it affects our hereafter. This world is temporary, right? So all the physical pain, emotional pain, all these different things that we suffer, that's temporary, okay? But if we commit shirk, right, that we're gonna have a consequence for that forever. Okay, so that's the worst form of oppression. So what are the effects of oppression? One, Allah doesn't love you. If you are somebody who's oppressing people, Allah does not love you, right? Allah says in Surah 3, chapter 3, 140, Allah says, Allah does not love the oppressors. Allah also says in Surah Al-Baqarah 258 that we will not receive guidance. Right? And you kind of put these things together with the situations that we're dealing with, because when I was going through this and gathering notes and putting stuff together, I found it very interesting that in just looking for this stuff, Allah was providing a lot of answers to things that we commonly talk about. Like why like why won't these people get the truth? Why won't they understand? Why can't they hear what I'm saying? Well, Allah does not guide the wrongdoing people or the oppressive people. So if these people are being oppressive and they're not repenting, seeking forgiveness, it's going to be hard for it's going to be hard for them to get guidance. Rarely the guidance is a mercy from Allah. So we have to make sure that we're not oppressing people, because Allah will not guide us if we're being oppressive people. In the hadith of Prophet Muhammad sallallahu said, beware of injustice, for oppression will be darkness on the day of resurrection. So that's another effect of oppression. So dhulm, oppression, actually is another word for darkness. And it's interesting. So if we commit dhulm or darkness or oppression in this world, we're going to be dark on the day of judgment. We're going to be in darkness. And that's a bad thing, to be in darkness on the day of judgment. Another hadith, Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, beware, if anyone wrongs a contracting man or diminishes his right or forces him to work beyond his capacity or takes from him anything without his consent, I shall plead for him on the day of judgment. So just think about that, right? Think about that. Think about people who take people's rights, violate people's rights, or take things from people without their consent, whether it be homes, money, whatever. And then what's going to happen on the day of judgment? Rasulullah is going to plead for that person. Okay. Yeah, go ahead. Got a question, Nadeem? You can go ahead and unmute yourself if you have a question.
Yeah, I got a question. So what's the role of the oppressed?
The oppressed. So, what do you mean, like role? Like, what do they do?
You know what's happening. You know it's being done. Oh, yeah, you know what's happening. You know it's being done to you. You know it's being done to your neighbor, etc., etc. What options do they have? Let's say Islamically. Now
Yeah. Well, so Islamically, it depends really on the specific situation. So let's take it to something that's like kind of bigger. So, like, say there's a ruler, right? Your leader, your Islamic leader, is oppressing you. And there's a hadith, and I don't have it here, but there's a hadith that basically, as Muslims, we are not to rebel against the ruler, the Islamic ruler, right? Unless they do open acts of kufr, okay, right? But we still have rights as Muslims to address our transgressions or our oppressions that we have upon us, right? So as Muslims, if we're seeing oppression happen and it's happening to us or happening to our neighbors, we go back to the hadith of Rasulullah, where Rasulullah says either we stop it with our hands, we stop it with our tongues, or we hate it in our hearts and we separate ourselves from the situation. So if we take it to the context of like what we know, where like say you're living in a community, you're going to a masjid or whatever, and like they're violating your rights, they're being oppressive, right? The first thing is like, okay, do I have the power to stop it? Okay. And if you have the power to stop it, then you stop it. But if you don't have the power to stop it, then you speak out against it. You go to the masjid, you say, hey, this is wrong, we got to stop this. You give the Quran and the hadiths and all these different things to support what you're saying. And if they still don't stop it, then you separate yourself. So it's like, you know what, I'm not being part of this community anymore, right? I'm gonna go to the other masjid where they're actually practicing Islam and not oppressing people. Yeah, go ahead, Shahrazad.
Okay, Assalamu alaikum. Good
Walaikum
morning.
salam. Good morning.
Ramadan Mubarak.
Ramadan Kareem.
Okay. I have a question also about like leadership. Okay.
Hmm.
Um, as far as the Muslim communities, how is it structured as far as leadership or imam? Like, like jurisprudence, okay, we understand that. Well, do
Hmm.
Muslims actually have a right to vote their imam in? I mean, don't they have those rights? And that would like, protect them from being like subjected to a new tyrant or things of that
Hmm.
nature. How does that actually work? Because that could kind of prevent things to a certain degree.
Yep.
So I was wondering how that actually worked, as far as building,
Hmm.
choosing. You should have a right to choose. I mean,
Right.
but uh,
Yeah.
I like to hear what you think about that, or however how that's structured.
Yeah. So we have we have the perfect example, and it's awesome how when we look back at Islamic history, how Allah like just put everything in place. So if you look at the four Khalifa Rashidun, the four Khalifas, right? Abu Bakr, Umar, Uthman, and Ali, radiallahu anhum, right? May Allah be pleased with all of them. If you look at the four different ways that they actually came into leadership, okay, and it actually shows like, okay, this is what is permissible in Islam. So a person can become a leader by like appointment, right? So and I believe it was Umar radiallahu anh who got his leadership because Abu Bakr appointed him. Okay, if I'm remembering correctly, Abu Bakr was pretty much selected by like vote, right? Because like you had the tribal leader. It's very similar to like how America does, where we have our individual vote, right? But then it goes to like electoral college, and then the electoral college kind of like represents their area, and then they make the last vote to see who's actually president, right? It's very democratic like that. In the Arab times, it was a little different because you had tribal leaders that represented their tribes. So they pretty much represented the interests of their jurisdiction, right? And then they said, okay, well, we all agree that it's going to be Abu Bakr. It was unanimous, and Abu Bakr very much by vote. You also have Ali and Uthman, right? Where you had there was different camps of like who should be the next Khalifa after Umar radiallahu anh. And I believe Umar radiallahu anh appointed somebody to make the decision, and how the person made the decision is they gathered all like the influential people, and they talked about it, and they had their votes, and then everybody kind of like gave their opinion, and then he selected. So someone appointed somebody to select the leader. So Islamically, there's nothing wrong with especially how we deal with things today with one a leader that is the current leader appointing somebody, right? That okay, a righteous person, this person's going to be the leader. Okay, there's also, ironically enough, there's nothing wrong with like uh what do they call it? I forgot the technical name, but like a kingship actually. Like because then during the Ottoman times we actually had like where it was within a family, the leader. Okay. But we can also have democratic where we can say, okay, the people are going to decide. We're going to have a democratic vote, and the people are going to pick who their leader is. So Islam is very flexible in that way that it allows whatever way to select leaders that the people want to do or what is customary for the time, right? Um, but again, every kind of political structure has strengths and weaknesses, right? So like for instance, we have our voting system in America, right? Where you just the person that gets the most votes wins. There's a potential flaw in that the people, especially the layman people, might not actually know or select the person that's the best to lead them at the time. You see, and then you have the situation how our system is where it's very political and very influenced by outsiders, where it's like, it's are we really getting the best leaders that we should have? And we'll get into that a little bit later too when we talk about like what do we look for in leaders. Also, you have where you can appoint somebody where like we go back to the time of the Sahabas where Muawiyah, radiallahu anh, he appointed his son Yazid as the leader who was not fit to be the leader, who everybody knew he shouldn't have been the leader because he was a open sinner and all these different things, right? So we have examples of good and bad on every type of political type of format. But just my opinion, I don't have any like Quran and Sunnah support. This is my opinion. Communities living, especially Muslim communities living in the West, where we're used to, it is our culture, it is our society that we are democratic by nature, right? And we are, so it's just living in America. We are accustomed, we are raised and developed to respect and show our opinions and be represented, right? So to me, right, if we knew who the qualified people were, the people that were learned, righteous, and all these different things, that should be the default way. Is like, okay, we need to select our leaders ourselves, right? We're not going to have just people just coming in, appointing their children, appointing their wives, and all these different things to be leaders when the people, especially when it goes against what the majority of the people want. So that's just my stuff on that. But yeah, Islam generally gives the flexibility to have, excuse me, any type of any not any type, but most types of governances that we have seen throughout history and today. Okay, hope that answers the question. Okay, so let's see. So continuing with the effects of oppression. Oppression destroys nations, and we have quotes by uh, Ibn Taymiyyah, rahimahullah, and Ibn al-Qayyim, rahimahullah. So Ibn Taymiyyah said, um, the well-being of the people in this world is attained through justice, even when they have personal sins that coexist with it. For that reason, Allah will uphold a just nation, even if it's a disbelieving nation, and Allah will destroy an unjust nation, even if it be a believing nation. So that's a very big observation that if we look at through the history of time, that even when there was Muslim nations or Muslim like leadership in different parts of the world and different parts of history, if they were unjust with the people, Allah got rid of them. But even when there's a disbelieving nation, whether it be a Christian nation or whatever, if they're actually just with the people, Allah will preserve it, right? Just that's a very big thing. Ibn Qayyim said, and he says that when you look in the Quran, every time Allah destroyed a people, it was because they oppressed others. It was not disbelief alone, but disbelief coupled with injustice. Now look at all the different examples you can think of in the Quran where Allah destroyed people. And every single one you'll find that they were being unjust and oppressing the people in their community, along with the disbelief in Allah. Okay. Um, and this is a very important one. This applies to us. It applies to everybody. When we do Islamic stuff, we always try to apply it to ourselves first, inshallah. Um, Allah says in the Quran, and do not let the hatred of a people for having obstructed you from Al Masjid Al Haram lead you to transgress. So he's telling the Muslims during the time, well, think about this. The Muslims during the time of Rasulullah went through like the greatest oppression by the Meccan pagans, right? And Allah is telling them, don't let your hatred for them cause you to transgress them. So this is something like, especially for myself, for others, like when we're dealing with like in the work that we do with giving dawah and trying to guide people and try to help people, and knowing that the impression that they're going through, it can cause, like, we are supposed to have that like hatred in our heart for stuff that goes against what Allah says. Like there's shirk. We should hate shirk. And we should hate the people that are promoting shirk. But we can't let that hate push us to the limits of transgressing others, which is something that I myself have probably been guilty of in the past. And may Allah protect me, and may those people forgive me that may have transgressed with my words or actions. But that is something we have to be very, very careful of. Yes, go ahead, Nadeem. Nadeem, you there? You got your hand up.
Yeah, I have my hand up.
No, go ahead.
Ibn Taymiyyah, correct me if I'm wrong. He was jailed
Mhm.
one time. He was jailed, and when he was jailed, because I'm looking at the people. The people, you have the unrighteous leader oppressing the people, whatever, and doing what he wants to do, however. But
Mhm.
you got to look at the people too. So Ibn Taymiyyah was jailed one time, and the
Mhm.
guard next to the cell was asking him, am I responsible for this oppression? He said, yeah, you are. You just as responsible for the oppression as the one that's doing it, the one
Mm.
who stoles his clothes, the one who gives him coffee, the one that serves him. All of them are participating. Had they not do the participation on their end that they think that they think they're doing the righteous thing for this oppressor, it will be shut down.
Yep.
So that's I just wanted to add to that.
No, actually a very key point because you'll find in a lot of these situations. I mean, let's go to a modern example. It wasn't Hitler putting the Jewish people in gas chambers. It was all his soldiers and generals and stuff doing all that stuff. He just gave the command or whatever, and they're the ones actually doing it. In our situations, it wasn't the guy in Pakistan doing the stuff. It was the people that he told to do it. So and I have and there's a quote that floats around in our circles, where like if you're silent, you're complicit, right? And this is actually supported in the Holy Quran, where if we look at the example of the we should all know the story of the Bani Israel that fished on um Saturday, right? And what they did was to try to get a loophole, right? Maybe they had secret knowledge or whatever, they were like the Sufi ones. But they put their nets out on Friday so that it would actually fish on Saturday. Then they would pick them up on Sunday. And then, just a long story short, there was three groups. There was the group who was doing the sin, right? Who was doing the transgression. There's transgression. We're transgressing the rights of Allah, violating. There's that group. Then there was the group of scholars, right? The rabbis and stuff. Then there was a group of like laymen, like not educated or whatever. Okay. The laymen were actually would try to like stop them from putting their nets out. They would like stand in front of them, fight them, try to get them to stop. Okay. Then the people who would do it, they would just still find a way to do it and go do it, right? Ignore the layman, whatever. We could probably imagine the stuff that was said. Oh, you're not a scholar. You don't know what you're talking about. Where have you studied? Oh, all these different things, right? Um, and then the third group was the scholars, and the scholars didn't say anything. They just kept in their homes and didn't mention anything about it. And you go into the tafsir, what happened? Allah destroyed two of those groups. He destroyed the people that were doing it, or not destroyed, he punished the people that were doing it, and he punished the scholars who didn't say anything because they were complicit. They were pretty much not stopping it, complicit. And then the people that tried to stop it, they actually weren't punished. Okay. Look at that in the context of what you just said. You have the people that not only are they not staying silent, they're actually facilitating the transgression and oppression and going on. And it's really sad. And people don't see it like that, but no, it's like you're actually the ones making this happen. Um so yeah, so Ibn al-Qayyim said about this ayat, he said, this is the strongest verse in the Quran about justice because it is not talking about our family or friends, but rather justice with those who we hate. So Allah is telling us in this ayat that we have to be just with the people that we hate. Now, just think about this in the context of the stuff that we hear. Oh, you guys are enemies of this, you're enemies of that, you're our enemies. Who are the worst enemies in the history of Islam? The enemies of Rasulullah during the time that he lived, they actually insulted him, tried to assassinate him, insulted his companions, prevented them from going to the Kaaba, and all these different things that those pagans did. And Allah is saying, don't be unjust to them. They still deserve their rights. They still deserve justice. So how can you go to anybody that's your enemy and be like, oh, I'm going to violate their rights? I don't care. They're my enemy. It's something we should really think about. There's another hadith where Rasulullah said, whoever killed a mu'ahid, and that's a person who is granted the pledge of protection by the Muslims. So a mu'ahid is basically a non-Muslim living in Muslim lands, and they pay the jizya, and then they're protected in the Muslim lands. Okay, so we're talking about a non-Muslim here. It says, "Whoever killed one shall not smell the fragrance of paradise, though the fragrance of paradise can be smelt at a distance of 40 years." So these are serious things that we have to. The whole thing with leadership, we have to understand injustice and oppression first. And Ibn Rajab, rahimahullah, said, "There's three ways to handle every situation. One, you could transgress, and Allah denies injustice even to the worst of creation. So you can think of the worst of creation, and Allah prohibits us from being unjust to them. We can be just. We can deal with it with justice. And he says that Allah uses justice only when it's necessary. And he said the third way to deal with something is with grace. Allah chooses grace for himself and loves grace. And this is even advice definitely me, because I'm really big on justice, like, black and white, but it's better to deal with things with grace. Maybe we all take from this advice from Ibn Rajab. Let's try to deal with things with grace. So we have to avoid oppression. Okay, and here's some other things tied to that. Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam said, there are three whose supplication is not rejected. So there's three types of people that when they make dua, there's no veil between them and Allah. Allah is going to answer their duas. Okay. The fasting person when he breaks his fast. So we're in Ramadan. So make sure that you're making your duas when you break your fast, because Allah is going to accept it, right? The just leader. So again, this ties into leadership. A leader who's just, right? Don't oppress people, adjust. And the supplication of the oppressed person. So now think about that. If we're oppressing people, there's a high chance that they probably could be making dua against us. So when all these bad things start happening, it could be a result of these dua the people that we're oppressing. Okay. You said it need an example of grace. Yeah. So a perfect example of grace is we look at the pagan the pagan Meccans. They were doing all types of sins. Were worshiping idols. They pretty much desecrated Allah's house with idols, idol worship. They were burying their daughters alive. They were robbing and stealing. They were doing all sorts of things, right? That we all should know through the history of the Meccan pagans. And justice would be to just, okay, y'all did all these sins. I'm going to punish y'all and get rid of y'all, right? Same thing with every disbelieving nation. Instead, what does Allah do? He sends them Prophet Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam to guide them. That's grace right there. That's grace. I'm gonna handle this. I'm gonna send my prophet to warn y'all and guide y'all and see how many of y'all get guided to the truth and repent for your sins, right? Another example of grace is that the simple existence and opportunity for us to get paradise, right? Paradise, okay? Paradise is beyond anything that we can actually earn. And this is in the hadith where Rasul says, none of you shall earn paradise with his deeds alone. And that when we get to paradise, it's just a mercy from Allah. And they asked Rasul, they said, even you? This is Prophet Muhammad. They said, even you, like your deeds aren't going to get you to paradise? He's like, no, even me. It's a mercy from Allah, right? So if Allah was just, we wouldn't even get paradise, because like paradise is beyond what we can actually earn. So in a more practical sense, right? It's just how we approach things, right? It's how we approach things. Maybe not being so harsh with our language, right? Maybe not being so quick to write people off, right? Maybe giving people a better chance to kind of like correct their mistakes and all these different things. That's an example of grace. And I know myself personally, I could definitely use that, because I'm ready. Like I flip switches and it's like, all right, this person's done, this person's done. We can even give it an example, and hopefully it continues this way. But if we look at, we're not supposed to be talking about TMOA stuff, but look at Fatima Jalani. When she first came out, she was making all types of mistakes and whatever. We kind of like roasted her, all these different things. But you look at her now, she's quoting the Quran and the Sunnah. She stayed strong on what she said. She said she's learning. It seems apparent that she's learning more Islam, right? You know, we were probably too harsh on her. We probably dropped the hammer too quick. Gracefully, we probably could have went back and just said, okay, let's give her some time. Let's advise her gently and just remind her of the hadith, remind her that what she just said doesn't align with the Quran and Sunnah, right? Grace even dealing with, like, say, whether it's Mubarak Jelani's family or even like people in TMOA, is understanding that whether it's real, whether it's justified or not, that there's some kind of emotional attachment that they have to Mubarak Jelani. So when we say bad things about him, like, oh, his teachings were wrong, or he did this, he did that, that affects them emotionally, right? Because they have that emotional connection, even like especially with his kids. There's think about your own parents. Like imagine, like, I know my parents aren't perfect, right? I know, far from it. But even if someone says something true about my parents that is bad, that I don't like, it's going to affect me a certain way. So that's like grace. Maybe maybe we watch the way we say things. We watch the way how we approach things. You know, that's how I think of handling things with grace. Um, to bring it back to one of the sayings of Umar radiallahu an, he said, and I try to live by this, but sometimes I don't, of course. He said, it's better to err in forgiveness than to err in punishment. So, in other words, it's better to be wrong when you forgive somebody than than it is to be wrong when you punish somebody. So, like for instance, let's look like a murder case, right? Guy's on trial for murder. So, um, say we execute him. Say we were wrong, right? That's worse than saying, you know what? Let's forgive him. I think he's okay. Let him off the hook. If you're wrong, you just you let a murderer loose, but you actually didn't kill an innocent person. Yeah, go ahead, Nadim. You got your hand up.
Yeah, I agree with you. However, what about the self-proclaimed knuckleheads, the ones that went to Alice Hard, they lead Juma, they do this, they do that, they self-proclaim, they have all these errors, and they participate with the oppression. Now, I don't have too much mercy in my heart for them because
Mhm.
they on the other end of the spectrum. I'm like you, they on the other end of the spectrum proclaiming this. They think they're 100% totally absolutely true, and they participate in this oppression. So
Mhm.
how gracefully can you deal with that? I understand the other point you're saying. Yes, that
Yeah.
you're dealing with somebody with ignorance and they trying to come up and you say, you know what, he trying to feel his way. I'll let him ride with that. But we
Yeah.
talking about a self-proclaimed knucklehead who didn't do what they supposed to. They think they're entitled and they coming across with the biggest arrogance you could find, and then they
Yeah.
coming with the foolishness.
Well, there's a this kind of plays into like a lot of the stuff that we see because people sometimes complain that we are too harsh, which rightfully so. Sometimes we are, specifically myself. Um, however, there's a Dawa principle that geez, hold on one second. Let me get this cough out. Put on mute. Okay, had a frog in my throat. All right, so there's a Dawa principle um that comes from an old Arabic saying, and I always mix up the words, but basically I understand the meaning. The meaning is basically if you if you show kindness, right, to someone who's arrogant, it doesn't work, right? You have to be, and basically you have to be arrogant with the arrogant. That's what the saying is. Arrogance with the arrogant is mercy or something like that, right? And it doesn't mean you be arrogant. It's just a saying, right? It's not a hadith. It's just an Arabic proverb or something. But they use it for dawah to say basically that when you're dealing with people who are arrogant, conceited, and you have to be strong and firm with them, right? And people should know this just dealing with people in their regular lives. When you go to someone who's arrogant and you kind of lower your wing, all they do is take advantage of that, right? They take it as a means to like, oh, I'm going to step on this person even more, right? So that's why when we're dealing with people, especially people that we deal with, dealing with a lot of arrogant people. And let's don't make no mistakes about it. Even these people that went to Azhar and went to these people are extremely ignorant, right? Extremely ignorant. We know this in the secular sect, right? Just because you have a degree don't mean you're not ignorant. Don't mean you're smart. There's people that don't have degrees that are the smartest, most intelligent, got the most common sense that you'll ever meet. Then you have people that have doctorate degrees, and you hear them speak, and you see how they act. You're like, this person is the most ignorant person I've ever seen. There's plenty of examples we could all think of, right? But when we're doing dawah, when we're talking to people, when we're dealing with people, you have to. It's a case by case situation. So if someone's being arrogant, someone's being harsh and strong, you have to be strong as well, right? You have to be kind of firm, okay? But in the most case, we look at the example of Rasul Sallallahu. Rasul Sallallahu always spoke very clearly, very directly, but he was also very gentle. He's also very kind, and we have to try to model that to the best of our ability. So I would always like, there's a saying, we have the saying, what is it, you catch more flies with honey than you do with vinegar. It's hard to stick to that, but that is the right approach, right? We even though we want to feel a certain way and handle a certain person a certain way because of how they're dealing with us, we have to try our best not to get into that same zone that they're in. And that's the struggle of giving dawah, and that's the struggle of fighting for justice and all that, because we can't stoop to the level that they're stooping to. So it's tough. I know. I know where you're coming from. um so let's see. And then Allah and Rasul Sallallahu said, Allah raises it up above the clouds and opens the gates of heaven to it. And the Lord says, by my might, I shall surely aid you, even if it should be after a while. So Allah answers the du'as of a just leader and the people that are being oppressed. Okay. So another hadith, Usaid ibn Hudair, a man of the Ansar, said that while he was giving to jesting and was talking to the people and making them laugh, I'll remember that hadith. Rasulullah SAW poked him under the ribs with a stick. So he was walking around, like Rasulullah used to joke around with the Sahabas and play with them how guys do. And he poked Usaid with a stick, like in his ribs. So Usaid said, he said, let me take retaliation. And Rasulullah said to take retaliation. Like he's like, let me get my kisas. And Rasulullah get your kisas. And Usaid said, you are wearing a shirt, but I'm not. Basically implying like, well, give me your shirt. Because you poked me, you hurt me. To make it even, you need to give me your shirt. So of course, Rasulullah being who he is, raised his shirt, and then it wasn't Usaid, sorry, it was a man of the Ansar. The man basically embraced Rasulullah and began to kiss his side. Alhamdulillah. Then the man said, this is what I wanted, Rasulullah. So all he wanted was to just hug and kiss him. There's a lot of examples that we've heard of stuff like this, and just shows the great leadership qualities of Prophet Muhammad, the most perfect human being, the most perfect creation. But what is showing in this hadith is that even as Rasulullah is poking around, could you imagine us just running around like you poke your friend in the side and he's like, wait, you hurt me. And you're like, man, just get over it. Like, I just poked you. Stop playing around. And then Rasulullah was willing actually to give him his shirt because he wanted to avoid oppressing this man. And this man knew this, and he took advantage of it so that he can actually hug and kiss Rasulullah. So now we have a little bit of time. I'm going to have to go over a little bit. Let's see. So Shahrazad said, our religious dialogue and differences with Fatima Jalani and open communication help bridge the correct way sunnah to be implemented in her life, inshallah. Yeah, I believe that. Alhamdulillah, it's we plan and Allah plans. Allah's the best of planners, and may Allah keep guiding them and keep guiding us too, correcting our ways, correcting our affairs. At the end of the day, I hope we all want the same thing, and that same thing is just for us all to be in paradise together. This world is just it's a facade. It's fun and games. It's not the real world. And we want to be in Jannah together. And we want all of our loved ones to be in Jannah together, right? And we generally, all of us, we don't look at we don't look at TMOA as enemies. Yeah, we joke. Yeah, we're harsh, and we've made mistakes. We will continue to make mistakes, and we appreciate it when people check us. We might be resistant, just like everybody else is resistant when people pull their coat. But keep doing it, right? Because we don't want to transgress. We don't want to impress anybody, and us trying to do something right. One thing that we can't forget, we cannot forget that Shaitan's always at work, right? He's always at work. And Shaitan has the best pivot game out there, right? So as soon as you get a leg up in one direction, he pivots and changes strategies and pivots and comes at a different angle. Okay. So it's very easy for people that leave the cult, that leave the falsehood and leave and recognize the shirk and recognize the oppression, to now think like, oh yeah, I got to figure it out. I'm going to start giving dawah now. I'm going to start calling them on their stuff. All Shaitan does, like, okay, so now I'm going to use that to try to get you to sin, right? I'm going to use that so that you could start backbiting and promoting false information and all these different things that they actually accuse us of. But that's how Shaitan gets people. And it's not to say that we're immune to Shaitan. No one is. But we all want to be in paradise. Like, we don't look at TMWA as enemies, even though y'all look at us like enemies, right? And let's be real. Most of y'all actually don't look at us like enemies. Y'all just play the game. Y'all are fitting into the mold, right? When you see most of us, you're not like, oh, that person's my enemy. Your first instinct is probably like, oh my gosh, that's so and so. But you probably then think about like, oh, I remember that person was cool. That person was a good person. I remember we had good times with that person. I remember this and that, right? Because a lot of us that have left these cult situations, inside the cult, they were the best amongst y'all. They were the people that you looked up to, the people that you wanted to be around, the people that you wanted to be like, the people that you asked for advice, your ex-leaders and these sorts of things. And all we want is for everybody to be as close as possible to the Quran and Sunnah, and to not be oppressed, to not be transgressed, to live their best lives as Muslims that's submitting to Allah, not to some sheikh, not to some made up concept and beliefs, not to stuff that violates what Allah and Rasul said. This is all we want. That's all we want. We've it People don't understand that a lot of the times this stuff is the burden to us, but we do it because we know we get blessings for it. We do our work because we know we get blessings for it. It's not to destroy something. It's not to get back at somebody. It's not for vengeance. Like, okay, if I say something, Allah's going to give me blessings and this will help me get to paradise. That's the goal. We want to be in paradise. We want our brothers in paradise. We want our sisters in paradise. We want our mothers in paradise. We want our fathers in paradise. We want our children in paradise. We want all of our friends in paradise. We want our friends in paradise. We want everybody in paradise. We want Mubar Jalani in paradise. We want his kids in paradise. We want his family in paradise. We want Noor in paradise. We want Noor Jalani in paradise. We want everybody in paradise. There's nobody that exists that, if we knew we don't even know the realities of hell, but knowing what we know, there's nobody that we want. Oh, I want that person in hell, unless Allah said and Rasul said that person deserves hell. That's the person people we say, yeah, may that person go to hell. Everybody else that there's a chance to go to paradise, we want paradise for them. Anyway, enough of my rant. Sorry, y'all. All right, so leadership. So we're finally getting into the qualities of what a leader is. So we talked about oppression, okay? And again, we had to talk about oppression, because talking about leadership doesn't make any sense unless we know what the consequence of being a bad leader is, okay? Or the consequence of following a bad leader, okay? So, leadership. Allah says in the Holy Quran, and those who say, our Lord, excuse me, our Lord, grant us from among our wives and offspring comfort to our eyes and make us an example for the righteous. Okay? So here in this ayat, it's a dua, right? Where in the word is, it says an example, but the word was imam. And we know imam means leader, right? But here it's talking about being an example. Okay? Leaders, this is like the one thing. Leaders are supposed to set the example. They're supposed to set the example. We look at the most perfect leader. Even non-Muslims say he's the best leader of all time, right? When they do their studies and look at historical figures, like there's that one book, like the 100 most influential people that existed, and Prophet Muhammad says something is number one. Why? Because he set the most perfect example, the most perfect example, and this is confirmed where Allah says in the Quran, indeed, the messenger of Allah, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, you have a good example to follow for him whose hopes in meeting Allah in the last day and remembers Allah much. That's our example. That's our example. The other day we had a little side conversation about polygyny, right? And what the topic was pretty much like, the one scholar said there's nowhere in the Quran or the Sunnah that speaks about polygyny or polygamy positively. And we all know Rasulullah had more than one wife. And this ayat says, Allah says, indeed, in the messenger of Allah, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, you have a good example. Whatever he did was good. Like, so there, you know what I'm saying? But anyway, that's a side topic. We want to bring that into here. It's Ramadan, you know what I mean? But anyway, that's our example. He's the leader. He has the quality. If we want to look at, like, what do I need to be a successful leader at the job? What do I need to be a successful leader on my basketball team, football team, sports, in the family house, wife, husband, whatever? We look at the qualities of Prophet Muhammad sallallahu, and you will see all the beneficial characteristics of a leader. For those of us who have been to college and taken business courses, business management or whatever, there's like all these types of leadership theories. Like there's servant leadership, there's situational leadership, behavioral theorists, all these different theories where all these people are trying to figure out what's the best way, like, to be a leader, right? What's the best way? And for us, the answer is simple. The best way to be a leader is to mimic, to the best of our ability, Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Okay. So let's look at the two most important qualities of a leader. And when I was going through this, alhamdulillah, like the Quran is amazing. It's surely a miracle, surely a miracle. No contradictions. And you'll see that a little bit when we go into this. So the greatest qualities of leadership, we go to the ayat in chapter 9, ayat 33, where Allah says, it is Allah who has sent his messenger with guidance and the religion of truth to manifest it over all religion. Although they may associate others with Allah, dislike it. I might have a typo there. So there's two qualities in this ayat that points out what you need to be, the most two, not what you need to be, but the most two important qualities of a leader, right? One is beneficial knowledge. Okay, beneficial knowledge. That is, he sent Rasulullah with guidance, right? That's the beneficial knowledge. And the religion. The religion is the actual action of that guidance. Okay, so for a leader, the two most important qualities is, the first one to look for, do they have knowledge, beneficial knowledge, right? Someone could be smart. And let's put this into a practical context. Okay, Bain, assalamu alaikum, she just joined. She has knowledge in, like, counseling, psychology, trauma experience, all these different things that relate to like counseling and psychology, right? Um, she has the knowledge. Now, I have knowledge too. I have knowledge in business, accounting, finance, right? All these different things, right? Working on my PhD, right? I can go say, you know what? We're starting a trauma center for victims of spiritual abuse. Okay. So, you know what? Jafar is about to be a doctor. So let's put him in charge because he has knowledge. I don't have beneficial knowledge. So that I don't have beneficial knowledge in that area. So you want to make sure that's what beneficial knowledge means. Like it applies to the context that you're looking at the leadership. So we were talking about religious leadership, right? They have beneficial knowledge of the Holy Quran and the Sunnah. Okay. Not only that, what else do you need beneficial knowledge? You need to know how to deal with people. There's people that know the Holy Quran and the Sunnah. They memorize the Quran, but they actually don't know how to deal with people. Is that a person you want to be in charge of people? Maybe that person's in charge of the school or something like that, where it's not that much, or setting up curriculum or something like that. So beneficial knowledge, just remember, it's not just knowledge. You can have people that are very smart, but they don't have the knowledge that is applicable to the leadership situation. Okay. Then the next is righteous action. They have to be righteous people. They can't be bad people, because you can have a person that, like, for instance, say we're looking to set up this trauma center for spiritual abuse victims. We select the leader. They have all these degrees, they have all these credentials and years of experience of working with people with spiritual abuse. But for years they've been taking advantage of the victims and having sexual relations and all these different things. That's not a righteous person. Or say they gamble and do other things that's not in accordance to being a righteous person. That's not a person we put in leader. They have the knowledge, they have the beneficial knowledge, but they're not an actual righteous person. So that they're not using that beneficial knowledge in the proper manner. Okay, so the two qualities we would look for first is someone who has the beneficial knowledge and has righteous actions. And we talked about, I said that we were going to come to this, right? When we're talking about, Scheherazade asked about, like, Islamically, what's the best way to kind of like elect leaders or select leaders? And well, I mentioned that Islam gives flexibility in that regard, where we can appoint leaders, we can elect leaders, we could do all types of things in Islam that's permissible as far as governance. Um, and one of the things that I was mentioning about, like, every type of leadership style, or not style, every type of governance style, whether it be like a kingship, a democracy, socialism, whatever you look at, they all have pluses and minuses. The only perfect system is Islamic system. But anyway, we're talking about like the democracy system, where simply the people with the most votes become the leaders, right? And if we go back, when you go that way, you have a high, or not a high, but there's a possibility that you could elect somebody that does not have the beneficial knowledge, and maybe they're not righteous, right? And you have the same risk with a system where that just appoints, or the leader is born into from a family or whatever. You can have someone that doesn't have beneficial knowledge and is not righteous. But here you also have the risk of where in Islam, in general, we're taught that we are not supposed to seek leadership positions. We're not supposed to do that. We're not supposed to, like, you see in America, like, people like, I'm going to be a politician, I'm going to run for office, and I'm going to do all that. That's not the Islamic way to do things. Okay. And we go to the hadith. Rasulullah said, "Oh, Abdurrahman," because Abdurrahman asked to be like appointed to, like, in charge of a city or something like that. And he told Abdurrahman, "Do not ask for authority. If it is given to you at your request, you will be held fully responsible for it. If it is given to you without your request, you will be helped by Allah in it." Okay, and this is in both Sahihs. That means, like, it's the most authentic. It's in Sahih Bukhari and it's in Sahih Muslim. So he's advising Abdul Rahman, like, don't seek leadership, because if you seek it, right, and you get it, pretty much he's saying you're on your own. You're not going to get a loss assistance, like, with stuff that comes up. But if you don't seek it, and somehow, like, people recognize your qualities and like, listen, you got to be in charge. We want you to lead us. And you're put in that position, Allah is going to assist you in that. Okay. So just think about that, where you might have someone who might appear to have the qualities, the best like resume on paper, but they're actively like, I need to be the leader. I need to be in charge. You guys need to select me, pick me, pick me, pick me. Versus someone that may not be on their resume like as shining as the person that's going around saying, pick me, pick me, pick me. But this person's sitting back like, I don't want nothing to do with any of that. But you guys know, like, well, that person might do a good job. They may be more qualified just to the fact that they're not seeking it, right? Because we know all the things that come with people that are seeking leadership. They're mostly usually doing it for the wrong reasons. And when you get into a person that gets that into a leadership position, when they get put in compromising situations, they don't take the righteous action. They do stuff to preserve themselves and preserve their image, preserve their leadership, because that's what they care about. Whereas, like, for instance, a person that doesn't care about leadership, when they get put into a compromising position, you see that they act different. They're quick to apologize. They're quick to recognize that, like, oh, I messed up on that, right? They're quick to say, I'm sorry. They're quick to say, I don't know, because they're not trying to preserve their leadership. They're just trying to do what's right. There's another hadith. Rasulullah said, we do not appoint to this position or in this authority of ours. We do not appoint people in this religion or give authority to one who asks for it, nor anyone who is covetous of the same. So, as Muslims, people that covet positions of authority and power and status, we don't give it to them. That's not what we do in Islam. Okay. And if you look at, like, again, we go back to the 4 caliphs, none of them wanted the position. Abu Bakr, when he got appointed, he actually nominated Umar. It was like, Umar should do it. He should be the Khalifa. And Umar was like, there's no way I'm being Khalifa. You should be the Khalifa. And then everybody was like, yeah, no, those got to be you. And then he did it. Same thing with Umar. Same, all the way down the line. Okay. So, let's see. I got some notes. If you want for your own goals, Allah, so I already mentioned that. Okay. So, good. Next slide. Let's see. I didn't check YouTube in a while. Oh gosh, there's a lot of comments. Let me catch up on the YouTube comments real quick. Boom. Speaking of ignorance and learning and giving people time, I removed this dua from a family member's home. They were taught by Mr. Jelani to put it over doors and windows for protection. Last time I was there at home, the dua was back up. Oh yeah, that shirk dua. The khamsatu utfi biha. Yeah, that's all shirk. And these 5, yep. How would you suggest speaking to the family members? Well, I mean, I would get them together, especially the people that are in charge of that family or of that household, and just explain very clearly with the proofs of why that's shirk. I would get a couple of ayat from the Quran, some hadiths, some statements of the scholars that they accept, because like when you're dealing with like cult stuff, they might only take from certain scholars, and just explain it to them, and and then see how they react to it, and that's really all you can do. And they'll either be guided by the truth of the Holy Quran and the Sunnah, or not, unfortunately. And that's the situation. That's actually a good example of how we can apply the hadith of where Rasulullah says, when you see a wrong, you either stop it with your hands, speak out about it, or hate it in your heart and leave the situation. So, like, and this is just me applying this situation in my own frame of mind, not saying like this is the way you should handle it. But you see that the first step he did was he seen this shirk dua, he stopped it with his hand, he took it down. I had the same situation with when I first left the cult. My children had those notches with the dua thing inside the notch, right? I cut them right off the necks. Like, this is not happening. Like, nope, this is not happening. Right? Stopped it with your hands. Okay. Then go back to the house and the dua's back up again. So you see that, okay, I'm not gonna be able to stop this with my hand because this is gonna be like a game. Like every time I come here, I take it down. Then every time I leave, they come back up. It's not my house. So the next step is, okay, you know what? I'm gonna speak to them. You bring the Quran, you bring the Hadith, you bring the statements of the scholars, you bring the common sense, the logic, and all that supports the Quran and the Hadith, right? At that point, now you've spoken about it. You did the second thing. Now they're either going to listen or not listen. And also we have to be patient too, because they might not listen right away. Sometimes things have to marinate. Sometimes people reject just out of like, we're we're prideful people. We don't like to be told when we're wrong, right? But they might listen eventually. Then me, the third step would be like, okay, say that didn't work. They're still putting it up. They're not listening to me. And then maybe the third step is, Allah knows best. I'm just throwing ideas out there. Maybe you tell them, listen, I don't feel comfortable with this hanging up in the house. Can you take it down when I come over? See how they react. Maybe they might respect you enough to be like, okay, yeah, we could do that. We could take it down when you come over to the house. Okay. Maybe, right? There, you give them a replacement. So it's like you say, okay, instead of putting up this dua, why don't you put up these ayats of the Quran? I'll buy you a nice little, frame or whatever, some picture that has, the three quls that we seek protection from. We could put these up in the windows instead, right? There's nothing from the Sunnah from there, but it's permissible to hang up Holy Quran. Okay, give them a good alternative, something from the Quran and the Sunnah. Okay, maybe that thing. But then I think like the most extreme part of it would be, or like the last ditch effort would be like, listen, I don't feel comfortable going into a house that's openly disobeying Allah and promoting shirk or whatever. I'm sorry, I'm not coming to your house. I'm not going inside your house anymore. And I'm just throwing stuff out there, just ideas. Maybe that'll help, inshallah. Okay. So we just talked about how in Islam. Oh, go ahead, Nadeem. Got a question? Got your hand up?
It's not a question, just
Mhm.
a warning. I had a notch too. I had a notch from a brother, and it broke,
Mhm.
and Allah Ta'ala revealed that it was, it was open, the notch itself. And
Yeah.
he said he wrote these duels in there and all that. And brother ain't write nothing in there, man. so it's a warning to you all. It's a money making thing.
Yep. That's actually, I've heard worse because at least there was nothing in there, but I've heard some that they've had like witchcraft spells in there, hair, all types of stuff that you see that they put in these notches, man. It's very dangerous, and Rasul is very clear that this stuff is shirk. There's the hadith that you can easily find well online that anybody who uses notches or ornaments, tahweez or whatever, is shirk. Okay. So we just talked about the last slide about how in general in Islam we don't seek leadership. We don't favor people who seek leadership. However, Islam is very practical, right? Because I know some are thinking probably like, well, wait a minute, can that means we can never like volunteer ourselves to be leaders and like can we, right? But yes, you can, okay, in certain situations. And um in this is in Surah Yusuf. If everyone remembers the story, Yusuf, he interpreted the dreams, and then he interpreted the dream of the Pharaoh, and then he said to the Pharaoh, and this is ayat 55 in chapter 12, he said, "Appoint me over the storehouses of the land. Indeed, I will be a knowing guardian." So he volunteered himself to be the leader, right? He interpreted the dream of the Pharaoh, and he had the dream about the cows, and I forget the exact details of the dream. Well, basically, it was saying that there's going to be a famine, right? There's going to be a drought, there's going to be a famine, and you need to store grain for 7 years because there's going to be a famine for 7 years, right? He interpreted a dream, and then he said to the Pharaoh, "Let me be in charge of it. I'll make sure it happens." He says, I will be a knowing guardian. So right there, someone can make the argument like, no, we can seek leadership. We can, right? Because Yusuf did it. Okay. So here's the conditions of when, as Muslims, we can actually seek leadership or volunteer ourselves to be leaders. Yusuf asked to be in charge, and it's when you know that there's nobody else who would be as just or righteous as you in that leadership position. Yusuf's a prophet. He was the prophet of the time. So of course, there's no one that's going to be as just or righteous as him. Okay? And remember, we go back to the first ayat that talks about the two major qualities that we need to have to be a leader. We need beneficial knowledge and righteous action. And this is where like just the beauty of the Quran. There's no contradictions anywhere in the Quran. This is in Surah 9, excuse me, ayat 33. And now we're talking about Surah Yusuf. And he says, I will be a knowing guardian. That's basically when you're saying knowing, I will be knowing. That means Yusuf is saying, I have beneficial knowledge. And then he says, a knowing guardian, right? When he's saying, I'll be a guardian, that means he's going to act righteous with what he's doing, righteous action. So, right there, in other words, he says, appoint me over the storehouses of the land. Indeed, I possess beneficial knowledge and I will act righteous. This is the beauty of the Quran. Everything connects and ties together. It's truly a miracle. So it's permissible to seek leadership when you realize you're the only person that can be just, you have the knowledge, and you're going to be righteous. If you see there's nobody else, then it's permissible without excess, like the politics, the downing other people, playing in the mud, or all these political type games we see. You're able to do that to ask for responsibility. Okay. As leaders, we should all know, and we should all know this, just not being leaders or whatever. We're all leaders in some sense, whether you like it or not. We're all leaders in some sense. We have to recognize that Allah sees everything. Allah says, and do not pursue that of which you have no knowledge. Indeed, the hearing, the sight, and the heart, about all those will be questioned. We're going to be questioned about everything. So if like if we're leaders in the leadership position, we're going to be questioned about every single person that we're responsible for. We're going to be questioned about that. And the law sees everything. So we have to make sure as leaders we take care of our responsibilities. And that's pretty much what it is. It's like taking care of responsibilities, which means not oppressing those who you're in charge for, and fearing Allah in every single action that you do. And you see nowadays that people take on responsibility of being leaders, and they're absolutely not qualified to do it. And this is a sign of the last days. I don't have the hadiths, but there's hadiths about how the ignorant will become the leaders, and the liars will be considered truthful, and all these different things. We see that happening very close to home already with stuff that's been happening with a certain group. We see that. We see it, like we see that these clearly ignorant, and may Allah guide them. Like we were all ignorant at one point. We are still ignorant at a certain point because we're all learning Islam. We're all learning our deen. But you see people that are like in any other normal context, the people that if you put them in a room with strangers, they would probably be considered the most ignorant person in the room. These people are being put in charge of whole communities and put in charge of people's lives. That's the state we live in nowadays. As leaders, we have to uphold the trust. Okay? This is in Surah Ma'idah, where it says, oh, you have believed, fulfill the contracts. Okay? Fulfill your trust or fulfill your agreement. So when we become leaders, right? So men, when we get married, you're in a contract. You've taken on a responsibility of your wife. You've entered into an agreement with Allah that I'm going to be the leader of this person. Okay? And your response, we're going to be held to that. We have to take care of that responsibility. When we have children, the same thing applies. Now, that's just in a household sense. Now, think about people that are like, oh, I'm in charge of all these thousands of people. That's a responsibility and a contract and an agreement that you have accepted. So you can't say, oh, that's not my problem. That's not my business. No, you're responsible for that. Allah also says, indeed, we offered the trust to the heavens and the earth and the mountains, and they declined to bear it and feared it. But man undertook to bear it Indeed, he was unjust and ignorant, right? And that's just our weakness as human beings. So we have to make sure that when we're in leadership positions, right? Even if you're just living by yourself, you don't have a spouse, you don't have any kids, whatever, you're a leader of yourself. Okay, so you have to apply the same qualities. Okay, so what's the goal? The goals of leadership, right? So this is an interesting story. Okay, and it shows how in Islam we are supposed, like, I don't care how great anybody thinks they are, none of us are the dust on the sandals of the Sahabas. None of us. None of us. Just the normal everyday Sahaba that we've never heard their name, don't even know who they are, right? We can't compare. Now imagine the status of a Sahaba who Rasul has said about the earth has not carried, nor has the sky covered a man a man more trustworthy or truthful than Abu Dar, right? There's nobody more trustworthy or truthful than Abu Dar. Think about that. Now think about this. Abu Dar said that he asked Rasulullah, will you not appoint me to a public office? He asked for leadership. This is the most trustworthy and honest, truthful person that Rasulullah just said about this in the other hadith. And he said, I want to be in public. Give me a leadership position. And Rasulullah stroked his shoulder with his hand and said, look at the leadership of Rasulullah. Remember, like when you're hearing these hadiths and stuff, everything, think about the leadership qualities of Rasulullah. So he's about to give him bad news. So this is like when we asked about the example of mercy or grace. Look at the grace in how Rasulullah responded to Abu Dar. He strokes his shoulder, right? He's about to give him bad news, right? About to tell him something that he might not want to hear. He's about to tell him something that may be perceived negative. Rasulullah knows this. Perfect leader, right? He could have just said whatever he's about to say, right off rip. Okay. So he strokes his shoulder and he says, Abu Dar, you are weak. And authority is a trust. And on the day of judgment, the worldly authority, is a cause of disgrace and remorse, except for one who fulfills his obligations and properly discharges its duties. So he strokes his shoulder and says, Abu Dar, you're weak. You're not cut out to be a leader. Yeah, you're honest. Yeah, you're trustworthy, right? But you're not cut out to be a leader. Look at that. So who are we to think that Rasul didn't say about me, you, or anybody else that you're the most trustworthy and truthful person that the earth has carried and the sky is covered. He's never said that about any of us. Who are we to think like, yeah, I should be the leader. Vote me in. I'm the leader. Who are we, right? So that's grace. That's a perfect example of grace, because he could have just said, like, if we rewound this, right? If we rewound this, and I'll just give myself an example. I'll be the guinea pig. We rewound this, right? Someone who I know is trustworthy, I know he's honest, I know he's truthful, comes up and he says, hey, I want to be the leader of XYZ, but I don't think he's fit to be the leader of whatever it is he's asking the lead of. Me, how I naturally communicate, brother Fulan would have came to me and said, hey, why don't you appoint me to be in some of this? And I was like, nah, you're not. I would have said no. Probably just kept it moving and not would have thought anything of it. That was just because that was the answer. He's not cut off for it. I gave him the answer. I gave him the correct answer and said no. That was just. That wasn't with grace. I didn't rub his shoulder and prepare for the negative information I'm going to give him. I didn't, do all that. I just said no, you shouldn't do it. You can't do it. And then, that's a perfect example of the difference between being just and being graceful. And that's it for today. Alhamdulillah. finished, went over a little time a little bit, but let's see here. Okay, I think we're all set. All right, is there any questions? Oh, I realized I wasn't even sharing my slide. Let me check the thing. Okay, I think we're good. Yeah, I had the slide sharing, but I guess it must have stopped at some point. So we're good on that. I'll eventually what I'm going to do is I'm going to share the slides with everybody. I'll probably post it in the chat room actually, so people can see them and refer back to them just to get the hadiths and stuff. So is there any questions before we end for today? We got a couple of minutes. We'll end at 9:30. Any questions, comments, statements? Ramadan Mubarak to everybody. May everybody's Ramadan be accepted. I'll wait a few minutes or a few seconds actually. Okay, I think we're good. May everybody, we'll see you next week, inshallah. We're going to continue with leadership. Again, I encourage everybody to, actually, I'm going to share it while we got a few minutes. Let me see if I can find it. Do a little promotion. And this has nothing to do with R2F. Let me share my screen. Let me see. Let me sign out first. Okay. I'm going to share my screen real quick. That's the right one. There we go. Okay. So, real quick. AMAU Academy. Okay. This is the website. It's amauacademy.com. Okay. This is the website. I'm trying to show you guys the different plans that they have. And that's a little slow. But myself and several other people are signed up for this. It's a great source, very cheap, very affordable, to take some programs here. So if you look at the programs they have 3 different programs. They have the Student of Knowledge program, which is, what's the cost? The Student of Knowledge program includes everything they have. So you have access to everything. Okay. Excuse me. Where's the cost? Choose a plan. Let's see. Here we go. So you have the Student of Knowledge program here, which gives you access to everything. It's $180 a year. $180 a year. I mean, that's like a little bit more than $10 a month, right? That's nothing. Like we pay more for Netflix and Hulu or whatever else, right? Then they have an Arabic program. Okay, so you get all the benefits of the self-development program and then all the Arabic programs. So if you want to just focus on that, it's $120 a year. That's $10 a month. Then if you're just looking for this, like, you don't have time to get into the thing. And these programs are built for like busy people with jobs and English base and all that you can get right in and start learning Islam and being connected to something, continually seeking knowledge. If you just want to set up for the self-development program, it's $90 a year, right? $90 a year. And it gives you, so I'll sign in just to show you guys a little bit. Well, I'll show the monthly prices real quick. But I'm encouraging everybody to sign up for this because the courses are great. So the self-development program is only $15 a month if you want to do monthly payments. The Arabic with program is $20 a month if you want to do monthly payments. And then the Student Knowledge program is $30 a month if you want to do monthly payments. Now, again, the basic small package is self-development program where you just get access to their self-development videos. It's short series on various topics, right? They don't go in depth. It's not meant to like make you like a scholar or anything. The Arabic program includes the self-development content, but also a program to help you learn how to speak and understand Arabic. And then the student knowledge program contains their student knowledge content, which is actually like you're going to an actual university Islamic school and learning all the different sciences of Islam, and it includes the Arabic and the self-development. So a lot of us are, not a lot, a handful of us are signed up for the student knowledge program. We've been actively taking their courses. So I'm gonna sign in just to show you guys some of the stuff. So self-development, that's the basic one. Does it show it? It's not coming up. Okay, so they're down here. We go to the self-development videos. These are all the videos that they have so far for self-development. How to have hope, how to fear Allah, how to increase your iman, how to repent no matter the sin, how to prepare for marriage, um, how to avoid like all these different topics that, and they're short series. Like for instance, like a lot of the stuff I got came from how to be a leader, right? You go to that series and there's short videos. Like this video series has 5 videos. One's 14 minutes long, one's 10 minutes long, 20 minutes. Okay. Just 5 videos on like basic Islamic concepts with like leadership. Okay. You can save them, you can play them at 2 times speed, whatever. Okay. How to perform ruqya, how to teach your kids about fasting. Okay. They even have like all real like everyday stuff that as Muslims to live our everyday lives we need to know. But when you go to then, so they have the Arabic. They have Arabic courses. Okay. They also, when you get in here, they have live Q&A, so you actually have sessions with the sheikhs and ask them questions that you have that come up. Student knowledge program. This is like there's an introduction, a lengthy introduction course. But they go and explain the whole system and all the different, like right now I'm taking the Akida, the introduction to Akida course, but they have fiqh, tafsir, hadith and the sciences, sirah, science of language and logic, Islamic etiquette, right? They have the monthly question and answers where they actually like you can attend the live sessions just like sitting with a sheikh and ask questions. Hey, Sheikh so and so, I'm wondering about XYZ. So it's a good way to actually keep yourself busy with Islamic knowledge no matter what your lifestyle is, right? We all work, we have kids, school and all that, but you can say, I'm going to watch one video a day, right? I'm going to watch a 10-minute video every day. Like for instance, I listen when I walk to work, put my headphones on and I listen to some self-development videos, right? 10-minute walk, 10-minute video. Okay. So I encourage everybody to do it. Oh, and like they're all about giving the knowledge. Alhamdulillah, Ustad Abdul Rahman and Ustad Tim Humble. That's the guys in the beginning. Let me see if they show 'em. These are the main 2 founders of this, but there's other teachers as well. Yeah, like this, like you're gonna gain a lot. They develop this, they don't even care. Like for instance, you can for your family buy one account and everybody they're like, yeah, go ahead, use it. Like your household, buy one subscription and all of you guys can listen and watch the videos, right? So it's really about just spreading knowledge. So take advantage. I have not seen a program that is this well put together with this much great information that is this cheap. Like I'm currently attending online university, trying to get my bachelor's in Islamic studies, and a credit costs more than a whole subscription year, right? For one course, for a 3-month course at the college I'm going to now, it's pretty cheap considering it's like a few $100s. It's like I think it's $150 a credit or something like that. Or no, I'm lying. I think it's like 75 or 125 a credit. So you take a 3-credit course and it's like $300 something, right? For a 3-month course. Here, you could take all the courses as much as you can for $180 a year. Like you can't beat that. You can't see that anywhere. And it's meant for English speaking people. right? So a lot of barriers to getting Islamic education is that you have to know Arabic first, right? This is why people go to Arabic countries and they stay there for 2 years just trying to learn the language so that they can go to an Islamic university and learn basic Islamic stuff, Islamic knowledge, right? But you can also learn that ground root basic, I'm gonna say basic or fundamental Islamic knowledge while learning Arabic at the same time. And this is what like this course, this system does. Okay, so I advise everybody to really take advantage of it, inshallah. Well, that's all I got for today. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم والعصر إن الإنسان لفي خسر إلا الذين آمنوا وعملوا الصالحات وتواصوا بالحق وتواصوا بالصبر الصلاة والسلام على رسول الله الحمد لله رب العالمين السلام عليكم ورحمة الله